The movie begins with a painter who finds a magic pen that turns any drawing into reality. Our movie begins with a young Japanese man named Kwan who is sitting on the street drawing a beautiful girl. At that moment, another painter named Leichi appears. He's driving a very expensive car with his girlfriend Marcia. It turns out Marcia was Kwan's old girlfriend, but she left him and married Leichi because he's the most famous and richest painter in the country. Leichi buys paintings from Kwan and sells them in exhibitions, pretending he's the one who drew them. Then he gives Kwan only 5% of the money, while he, of course, pockets the rest. Anyway, Kwan goes to get into his car, but he finds it broken down, and the money he has isn't enough to fix it. After a while, Kwan returns to his house in the artist's district. There, the landlord asks him about the rent, so Kwan pays for the current month. But the landlord tells him he has to pay for the new month tomorrow. Kwan gets angry and wants to hit him, but then he goes to an art gallery in the city because the annual exhibition is coming up, and Kwan wants to display his paintings. Kwan has to pay all the money he has to the gallery owner, hoping he'll put his paintings in the exhibition. But he refuses and makes fun of Kwan, telling him no one likes his paintings except Xiao, who works in a barber shop because she's blind and can't see. Kwan gets very upset and feels embarrassed because he sees himself as a genius painter, but Leichi's paintings sell much faster because he's famous and everyone loves him, even if he didn't even paint them. Kwan then goes to the barber shop, and there he sees Xiao trying to cut customers' hair even though she can't see. At that moment, the customers argue with her, so Kwan tries to defend her and hits them, but he's very weak, so they hit him instead. At night, he's sitting with Xiao at home. His whole body is bruised from the beating, and his face shows signs of blood and swelling. He gives Xiao a gift, which is a new pair of shoes, and she's very happy because he cares about her, even though she can't see him. It seems they both really like each other. Kwan's friend Mang is with them, so Xiao leaves the house so they can be alone. At night, Kwan and his friend sit on the rooftop until suddenly Mang falls asleep. Kwan keeps looking at the sky until he sees a spaceship passing over him. He pretends to be asleep and watches the ship stop. 3 aliens get out of it onto another painter's rooftop. Kwan quickly hides and keeps watching them, trying to photograph them, but they sense him, so they return to the ship and escape quickly. Kwan notices that a magical tool fell from them onto the ground, so he goes to pick it up before anyone else sees it. The next day, Kwan wakes up and tells Mang everything. Of course, Mang makes fun of him, because everything he's saying is the same picture hanging next to Kwan's bed. Kwan gets very agitated and doesn't know how to respond, so Mang takes the picture from next to him so he can sleep. Kwan then goes to start his work as a street artist. At this moment, he decides to use the tool that fell from the aliens yesterday. He draws a circle on paper to test the tool's line, and suddenly his drawing turns into a real stone. He suspects that this tool is magical and that it's what did this. So he draws an apple, and it actually turns into a realistic apple. He's completely shocked and can't believe it, feeling like something strange is happening. He rushes back home and tells Mang everything, but Mang, of course, doesn't believe him. So Kwan proves to him that he's not lying. He draws a gold bar on paper, but the gold bar doesn't appear in reality. Mang makes fun of him and throws the paper out the window. Suddenly, that paper turns into a real gold bar and falls on the landlord's head. At that moment, the landlord argues with Kwan until he discovers that what fell on his head is a gold bar. So he leaves Kwan alone and takes the gold bar in exchange for the wound on his head. After that, Kwan starts thinking with Mang about how they can benefit from this amazing tool. They draw another gold bar, and it actually appears in the real world. They are very happy and want to draw a house to move out of that horrible apartment. Kwan draws a beautiful house, and suddenly this house appears on the street. All the city residents get scared, and then they call the police to see what exactly is happening. Police detectives arrive and enter the house to see who is inside. At that moment, Kwan is standing in front of the house monitoring everything, and he's afraid the police will arrest him. So he decides to erase the drawing. He realizes at that moment that the other side of the pen works as an eraser, and he actually erases the drawing, so the house disappears from existence. Kwan and his friend return home, and there he decides to draw a new painting. But this time, he'll draw money to buy a new house because every time he draws a house, the police will surely arrest him. He writes 20 million on a piece of paper, hoping the money will appear for him. But he's shocked that the numbers turned into actual numbers in the real world. So he draws the shape of money and writes the amount he wants on it. And indeed, the money starts filling the house strangely. Kwan changes their hairstyles and clothes, and they buy new cars. They go the next day to look at new houses so they can move from Kwan's current place. There they meet Leichi, who is also trying to buy a new house. Leichi keeps making fun of Kwan because he's a failure and poor. He won't even be able to buy one house. Kwan gets angry and decides to buy 2 houses, especially after Meng encourages him to do so. Leichi is shocked when he sees that Quan has all this money and doesn't know how he got it, because Leichi himself can't afford to buy the house Quan bought. The next day, Quan decides to use his money to get married. He throws a huge party and invites many people. At that moment, Xiao enters the party, and Quan approaches her and tells her he loves her and wants to marry her. But she shocks him and tells him she doesn't agree to marry him, and she actually leaves the party to go. Quan runs after her, and outside the building, Quan asks her why she did that. She tells him she did it for him because she doesn't want to embarrass him, as he's been able to sell many paintings and is now a rich person, so he can marry any girl he loves. As for her, unfortunately, she can't see and won't be able to help him with anything. Quan gets upset and tells her he loves her, and he tells her he didn't sell any paintings or anything. He starts telling her about the magical tool that fell from the aliens, and says he used this tool as a pen to draw anything he wanted and turn it into reality. Of course, Xiao is very impressed, but she still doesn't believe him, so he decides to prove to her that the pen is really magic. While they are talking, the same spaceship passes over them, but he doesn't notice it because he's focused on Xiao. They return home after the party's over, and Meng comes to sit with them. Quan brings one of his paintings and draws eyes, and these eyes appear on Meng's shoulder. Of course, they are all scared when they see these eyes, so Quan erases the eyes again and starts thinking about a plan to give Xiao her eyes back. He decides he will draw her entirely, and he keeps drawing her until morning comes. After he finishes the drawing, Xiao discovers that nothing has changed, so she decides to leave. But as she is leaving the house, she suddenly disappears. Xiao emerges from the painting with eyes and can see. Of course, they are all shocked and can't believe it, and Xiao is very happy that she can finally see again. Quan takes her to see the city because she has never seen it before. It appears that Meng also dated a beautiful girl he had liked for a long time. After a while, Quan holds an auction to sell his paintings, and it seems people are coming from everywhere to buy his paintings. At that moment, a news report appears on TV about very strange incidents happening in the country. The first incident is the disappearance of an actress's eyes in Hollywood. The second incident is the disappearance of 20 million from a bank in China. And the last incident is the disappearance of a car while its owner was driving it with his girlfriend. The press goes out to the street to investigate all these cases, and one of the journalists discovers that a house appeared and disappeared in an animal at the same moment. Now a police detective reviews the surveillance cameras at the bank and notices that the money disappeared without anyone entering or even leaving the bank. At that moment, Leichi calls the detective and tells him that a poor painter from the area named Quan suddenly has a lot of money. He's rich and famous now. So the detective decides to monitor him because he's suspicious of him, and he actually discovers that the money Quan is spending is the same money that was stolen from the bank. So he decides to arrest him to interrogate him. It appears that a police detective is sitting at the auction, monitoring everything that's happening. Suddenly, he and his friends stand up and ask Meng and Quan to come with them to interrogate them. They actually go with them to a room in the villa, and there the detective asks them about the bank robbery and the money they have. They tell him they didn't steal anything, and of course they are very scared while talking. At that moment, Meng decides to use his mind for the first time. He explains to the detective that he has a magical power that can turn any drawing into reality. He tells the detective that he wants a car, so Quan draws the car, and suddenly it turns into a real car in front of him. The detective is very impressed and believes that Quan has magical power, and he actually lets him go to continue his auction. Quan returns to the press, reassuring them. After a while, the auction ends, and they all return to Quan's house. There, they sit and talk, and they are very scared because they were about to go to prison. Quan begins to understand that this pen isn't magical at all, but its mission is to transfer things from one place to another. He gets very agitated because he doesn't want to harm anyone, and at the same time, he doesn't want to appear as a thief and then go to prison. At that moment, the police detective sees on the news that there's a report about a car disappearing under mysterious circumstances, and it's the same car he has. So the detective goes with his friend and monitors Quan's house until he gets an order to arrest him on suspicion of theft. Quan notices that a police car is in front of his house, so he gets very agitated and is scared because he doesn't want to go to prison. After a while, Marcia, Quan's old girlfriend, arrives, and there are signs of beating on her face. She enters the house to talk to Quan and apologizes to him very much for abandoning him back then and marrying Leichi. Quan forgives her when he learns that Leichi hit her because he was jealous of him. He tells her that he used to be obsessed with painting only and wasn't interested in her, besides not having money, and she needed money to pay her father's hospital expenses. That's why he forgives her, because if he were in her place, he would definitely have abandoned her. They both keep drinking until they get drunk, and Quan decides to tell her everything about the magic pen. At that moment, Leichi is in his house. monitoring Quan from the surveillance camera attached to Marcia's clothes. It turns out that all this was his plan to find out the truth, and he's shocked, of course, when he learns the story of the magic pen. At that moment, Zhao is watching TV and sees the news about the actress who lost her eyes, so she feels guilty because she is the reason the actress lost her eyes. The next day, the police detective goes to Quan to take the magic pen from him, especially after he saw the news that the car was stolen. It appears that the detective doesn't believe what's happening. It's like he's in a science fiction movie. Of course, Quan is very scared at that moment because he might go to prison. The detective reassures him that he won't imprison him because he hasn't committed any crime, and all he needs to do is hand over the pen to the police, and then he'll be innocent and no one will bother him. At that moment, Quan agrees and opens the safe, but he's shocked that the pen isn't in the safe. A few hours ago, Quan was sleeping on the floor, drunk, so Lei Qi entered the house without anyone seeing him and stole the magic pen from the safe. After that, he kidnapped Marcia and escaped from the house. Even though the detectives saw him leaving the house, he lied to them and told them he was getting his wife from the house. Anyway, at the present moment, Lei Qi appears on the plane with his assistants, and Marcia is tied up so she can't escape from him. Lei Qi begins to think about things he wants to draw. So he decides to draw an art exhibition, and indeed the exhibition appears in the middle of the city and destroys anything around it. Lei Qi arrives at the exhibition and is very impressed by its beauty. After that, he decides to build a legendary palace and declare himself emperor of all China. So he draws the palace and it appears in the real world. After that, he imagines marrying the most beautiful girl in the world. He has a magazine with a picture of the Chinese beauty queen, whose name is Alice. He decides to draw her so she will appear in front of him and he can marry her. Alice is in a beauty pageant at that moment, and the host announces that Alice has won. So the staff member goes to put the crown on her, but suddenly Alice disappears from the pageant and appears in front of Lei Qi's palace. Shocked and thinking she's dreaming, Lei Qi tells her he's the one who brought her here to marry her. She gets angry and slaps him across the face, causing his nose to bleed. After that, the guards grab her so she won't do that again. Suddenly, the police arrive at the location to take the magic pen. But Lei Qi refuses to give them the pen because he believes the pen is his right and he wants to achieve his dreams, even if drawing means transferring something from one place to another. It appears he built a palace on the flight path of planes landing at the nearby airport. After a while, he decides to escape from planet Earth entirely, so he draws a spaceship to escape to space with. Suddenly, the spaceship of the alien creatures from which the magic pen fell the first time appears. 3 very strange-looking, green creatures with tails come out of the ship. One of them attacks Quan, and it appears he's very angry and wants to choke him to finish him off. Quan tries to explain to him that he doesn't have the pen. The rest of the creatures attack the police detectives, so they drop all their weapons on the ground. At that moment, Quan points to Lei Qi because he has the pen. They notice that Lei Qi isn't there, so he appears inside a war tank to finish them all off and take the pen for himself. Humans escape and run everywhere. The aliens go and attack the tank. They grab the tank's barrel with their hands, and then they bend it, and the front of the barrel is inside the tank. So they pull Lei Qi and his assistants out of the tank, and Lei Qi gives them the magic pen and asks them to forgive him. The leader of the alien creatures gets angry as soon as he sees the pen and knows that the pen was broken. So he and his friends attack Lei Qi and are about to finish him off, but Quan intervenes and asks them to forgive Lei Qi. Quan tells them the truth because he was the one who did that to the pen, and indeed the leader decides to forgive him because Quan is brave and admitted his mistake. While they are talking, the alien leader begins to erase all the drawings and returns everything to its place. So everything actually returns to normal, and the magic drawings disappear, and even Xiao's eyes are taken from her, and she goes back to not seeing again. The police take Lei Qi with them to imprison him for kidnapping Alice and also for hitting Marcia. And the movie ends there. If you liked the video, hit like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.